Thank you for joining us for this second ECS Behind the Scenes virtual open house. I'm Shelley Unger, Director of Institutional Philanthropy at ECS, and pleased to serve as your host this morning. With the able assistance of Abigail Malloy, the ECS Manager of Board and Development Relations. As many of you know, ECS has had to cancel many of the planned face-to-face gatherings this year. So we are certainly pleased to see your faces this morning. The ECS mission is to help those we serve stay focused on their goals in the midst of crisis. In a year like this one, it can feel like there's a new crisis every day. The first ECS virtual open house focused on mindset, our intensive 3 to 7 year program with the objective of helping highly motivated Philadelphians escape poverty permanently. If you were unable to attend that open house and would like to learn more about long-term coaching and the mindset program, please let me know, and I can send you a recording of the session. This morning, we're highlighting ECS's supportive housing programs. We anticipate ending the session by 11:30. We are recording today's behind the scenes for future use. We have placed everyone on mute, as Abigail mentioned earlier, to start, and ask you to unmute yourself to ask questions during Q&A at the end. Please feel free to type your questions into the Zoom chat function as they occur to you. Abigail will be monitoring the chat to ensure that questions are addressed. To get us rolling, please take a moment and respond to this question in the chat. What are you most interested in learning during this behind the scenes? Thank you for doing that. As you're doing that, I will just highlight what to expect this morning. First, ECS's Executive Director, Dave Griffith, will give a strategic overview of ECS's supportive housing programs and how they fit into ECS's overall mission. Next, Nebert Richards, our Senior Director of Housing, will introduce Raina McLean, our Assistant Director of Emergency Housing, who will give the virtual tour of St. Barnabas Mission and describe the typical stay of a family in residence. In conclusion, Nebert will return to provide more detail on ECS's Rapid Rehousing Program, which is a traditional program from emergency housing to permanent housing. We've allocated 10 to 15 minutes at the end for Q&A. Let's get started. After a long and successful career in business, Dave Griffith came to ECS in 2013 as the 11th Executive Director, a position we also refer to as head coach. As Dave talks about our 25-year history of helping St. Barnabas Mission residents achieve a stable housing situation and the ECS approach to supporting all of our participants in attaining individual economic independence, Dave's role as head coach will become clear. Dave, you take it from here.
Thanks, Shelley. I appreciate the introduction. And first and foremost, let me say a welcome to all of our guests today. And I know some of you I recognize as having attended the earlier sessions. But first and foremost, let me just very simply say thank you. Whether you are a direct supporter at this time or hoping to be one, just your involvement about learning about the work that we do is an incredibly important step as we build a movement here to address poverty in Philadelphia. So good to be with you, and thank you for allocating some of your time this morning. 25 years ago, ECS committed itself to serving women and children who needed emergency housing by buying and renovating a building formerly occupied by an auto parts dealer near the corner of Girard and 61st in West Philadelphia. Thus was born our version of the St. Barnabas Mission, which actually had its roots in a church basement by that name. As you may know, the city of Philadelphia, through the Offices of Homeless Services, or OHS as we refer to it, serves as a central entry point, assigning those in need to shelters across the city. OHS also serves as the distributor of the federal HUD funds to help finance shelters across the city. Importantly, they also set policies associated with homeless services in Philadelphia. I might note that our budget for St. Barnabas is a little bit under $2 million, and we receive funding of 810. So donor support and endowment is what makes up the difference and allows us to deliver what is considered one of the best run shelters in the city. Since 2019, ECS has been utilizing holistic coaching across all ECS programs to help Philadelphians examine and solve their problems and put themselves on a path towards upward economic mobility. In our housing programs, the participants' main focus is to gain stable housing. In addition to St. Barnabas Mission, we manage a rapid rehousing program designed to bridge the participants from emergency housing to permanent housing. And you'll learn more about both programs from their leaders. So let me share with you a chart of how these programs fit into ECS's mission. Abigail, you think you can share that slide? Okay. There we go. Good. I'm glad it came up because me dancing is not something we want to share. As you can see, we categorize ECS's programs into three buckets, if you will, defined by the desired outcomes. So stability, which is designed to help participants move them out of crisis situations. That's where St. Barnabas and our rapid rehousing portfolio would reside. Prevention is programs that promote alternative thinking strategies to increase the participants' well-being. And very specifically, that's youth development, which is our out-of-school time and seeing youth succeed, as well as a very, very robust health and wellness. Our out-of-school time programs obviously have had to do a dramatic shift. You may have been reading about the city centers. We will be manning those when schools open to provide supervision of children as they receive their virtual education. So that entire program has gone from being online to being classified as essential, and we will be stepping up and meeting that need at this time. And finally, you'll see transformation, which is where mindset resides and where the RISE initiative resides. And these are really designed to move people along the economic mobility continuum and move them up and out of poverty permanently. Our mission overall, everywhere we touch, is to challenge and reduce intergenerational poverty. We know that achieving housing stability is a key part of attaining long-term independence and escaping poverty permanently. And so you're going to hear today from the ECS team who oversees both the housing program, and that's Niebert Richards. Niebert has over 30 years of child welfare experience and has been serving ECS participants since 1996. She earned her BA in social work from Albright College and her master's from Temple University Advanced Standing Social Work Program. And we are, I can tell you, personal experience and just it's a joy. We're fortunate to have Niebert on our team. Her leadership of this critical area requires balancing the needs of many of the constituencies involved in the housing program. And I want you to imagine that you're running a shelter with 107 beds women and children, and then we've been asked to accept families, which introduce men into the mix, and then COVID hits. So you want to talk about a difficult hand to play. Niebert and her team has done a spectacular job. But there's many constituencies that she oversees. It's obviously our participants. We also work closely with OHS employees who control city housing policies, the landlords who own the rapid rehousing stock, and of course she manages her team with all the complexities and challenges and stresses that working in a shelter can bring. Niebert will also introduce you to Rena McLean, who is the direct supervisor at St. Barnabas, and she's going to provide later on after Rena more detail on rapid rehousing. So enough from me. Let's listen to the folks who are really doing the work. And again, let me just very simply say thank you very much for being on the call today and for your interest in the work that we do. So with that, Niebert, let me turn it over to you. On mute, Niebert. There we go.
All right, that seems to be working. Thank you, Dave. Welcome to you, our guests, and thank you for your interest in the ECS supportive housing programs. If you're like me, you're shocked at the inequitable impact of the pandemic on Philadelphians. We are all suffering in some way, but those who are experiencing homelessness in Philadelphia are impacted the most. OHS estimates that there are about 5,700 people who are homeless in Philadelphia, with 950 that are unsheltered. My team, along with our coaching staff, is working every day to help those who were assigned to us achieve stable housing. For our participants, this is a first step towards putting themselves on a path of upward economic mobility. In order to give you a behind-the-scenes look at St. Barnabas Mission, I'd like to introduce Rena McLean, our Assistant Director of Emergency Housing at St. Barnabas Mission. Rena has been with ECS since 2014. Rena's job is somewhat like running a long-term stay hotel. Before the pandemic, the job was challenging enough. When the pandemic hit, Rena and our staff have had to pivot to ensure safety for both residents and staff. Leading a team of essential workers in 2020 requires discipline and creativity, both of which Rena has. We don't know what we would do without Rena's on-site leadership. Rena will provide the behind-the-scenes virtual tour of the ECS emergency shelter. Thank you. Rena?
Good morning again. Thank you all for joining us, and thank you, Niebert. I'm so glad that we have the opportunity to be here today, and I can show you what my home away from home looks like, St. Barnabas Mission. So I'm going to start off by giving you a behind the scenes look using a PowerPoint presentation. Abigail, can you bring that up for us? Thank you. Here's St. Barnabas Mission, discreetly nestled on the corner of Girard Avenue and Edgewood Street in the Carroll Park community of West Philadelphia. We're actually a pillar for the community. We serve as a hub for our community. We have a food pantry which distributes food monthly. We serve for committee for block beautification projects, and we also distribute holiday baskets. Next, Abigail. Here's the lobby at St. Barnabas Mission, where participants are greeted by our direct service staff and security. This is where we actually start our relationship with our participants. Our residential staff will do an immediate safety and urgent need assessment, and then they'll introduce the participants to the community. Next. If you saw in the lobby photograph, there were 2 photos on the wall. These are 2 photos that were donated by Fresh Artists. We actually have some installations planned for items or artwork that was donated by our donors. We had a couple of drives, and they'll be installed within a few months to come. Here's our main dining room. It serves as a central meeting place for our participants. We have family style dining here, community meetings, wellness programs with our partners, summer camp, family game night, and volunteer activities. Next. This is our state-of-the-art kitchen, one of the places that I'm most proud of. Oftentimes our partners come and they tell us how well equipped our kitchen is. And we're very, very happy to have this kitchen because it allows us to run programming efficiently. And a lot of our participants are happy with the services that we provide. So here we prepare meals for our participants. We also pack community bags for our pantry. And we also prepare about 400 frozen dinners a month here that we distribute to community centers or senior community centers in our neighborhood. This is a layout of St. Barnabas Mission. This actually is the Health and Wellness Suite, which was recently remodeled to include services for wellness activities and participant meetings. This is the hallway in the Health and Wellness Suite. And next we're going to show you, this is the office space, one of the larger office spaces in the Health and Wellness Suite. Right now it's set up for a CPR class, as you can see. And this is one of these smaller offices. Inside the Health and Wellness Suite is where our participants would meet with our partners, like the Homeless Health Initiative run by CHOP. Also, we work with the Philadelphia College of Osteopathic Medicine, and Malvern Behavioral Health provides behavioral health services here. This is the dorm room. This is where participants are assigned when they arrive at St. Barnabas Mission. This room can accommodate up to 20 individuals. So it is bunk, and we have congregate living. Here you can see the blue privacy screens. These were recently installed for COVID as a barrier to help mitigate the spread. So we introduced some social distancing here, and then we also installed these barriers to keep families safe and protected in shared room spaces. These are some of the beautification projects that staff and participants work on collectively to help build community and positivity in St. Barnabas. We really try to focus on keeping families motivated and inspired. So we try to instill positive messaging and a lot of color throughout the community. Here are some additional art pieces from fresh artists. Next slide. And this is our computer lab where participants have the opportunity to do online job searches. Children attend school here. Even prior to COVID-19, we had some children and parents that were working on school online. We host movie night in this room. We also have a small lending library. And I believe that actually concludes the video or picture portion of the slideshow. Next, I'm going to talk to you about what it's like for a participant who enters the doors of St. Barnabas Mission. So sometime back, we had a family enter St. Barnabas, Mrs. McIntyre and her children. They were actually displaced due to a house fire and they lost everything. Prior to her arrival at St. Barnabas Mission, Ms. McIntyre worked at a fast food restaurant. And in order to keep their basic needs met, she had to take every shift that was offered to her, which left her very little time to deal with her own medical needs and her children's medical needs. So she had no time really to deal with the things that were negatively impacting her family because she was at work all the time. When she came into St. Barnabas, the residential staff greeted her. They made sure that she and her family were safe. They were able to provide essential items like clothing. And that's really what we focus on for our participants at St. Barnabas Mission. We want to make sure that they're all safe. We want to make sure that they have their basic needs met. And then there's the housing. So when Ms. McIntyre arrived at St. Barnabas Mission, she met with the residential staff first, then she met with our nurse who did a health assessment. And upon the health assessment, the nurse noticed that Ms. McIntyre did have an untreated mental health condition and that her children had some dental concerns. We were able to get them connected to one of our community partners. Their dental care was stabilized, and Ms. McIntyre was connected to behavioral health care. Often when I would see Mrs. McIntyre in the hall, I would ask her how she was doing, and she would say, "It's all good, it's all good." She was known across the agency for saying that. Around the time that she left St. Barnabas, I asked her to give me some more details about what she meant when she said that. And she said that at St. Barnabas Mission, she had been able to save more money than she'd ever saved in her life, that her children was well, and that she felt well. And it had been a long time since she just felt okay. So she moved out successfully and had a successful entry into housing. And these experiences are not uncommon for individuals or participants who enter St. Barnabas Mission. This year alone, this past fiscal year, we served about 350 families or 350 individuals, which is a lot. And that's just through our housing program. That doesn't include the number of people that we touch in the community. And I also want to share, before I end, I want to share one quote that I love that was given to us by another participant. She said, "I don't even call this a shelter anymore. I call it a place of love. We feel so much love here." And that is embodied and echoed throughout the community at St. Barnabas Mission, because our staff, with the support of the agency and our leadership, really work to provide some stabilization and partner with participants so that when they leave, they're better off. Thank you.
Thank you, Raina. I love the fresh artist artwork, and I certainly appreciate the contributions made to make our space warmer and more welcoming. So what is rapid rehousing? Rapid rehousing is an intervention designed to assist households to quickly exit homelessness, return to housing in the community of their choice, and not become homeless in the near term. Households receive assistance locating, applying for, and securing affordable housing units. They're provided a temporary subsidy for a period of up to 12 months, while allowing them an opportunity to address barriers and assume market rate rent or other permanent housing at the end of the 12 months. And during the 12 months, they receive housing stabilization services that may include housing retention activities, budget counseling, linkages or referrals to social service organizations, especially located in their neighborhood. Our program is comprised of a program manager who recruits landlords, conducts intake interviews, as well as completing our own housing quality inspections, and an opportunity development coach who carries the case for the duration, meeting with the participant regularly and supporting them around goal planning and progress. Participant households are referred to our program from OHS, and they generally come from emergency housing programs. We've had quite a few, actually, participants who have come through our own emergency housing program to our rapid program. But I'll speak about Miss B and her 8-year-old daughter. So once a unit was located and she was leased up and was now moving into her unit, upon move-in, she received a move-in bag, which contained shower curtain liner, dish detergent, sheets, towels, cups, plates, some of those things that are generally hard to gather while you're in shelter, and when you're so excited to get into housing that you're not thinking about those things right away, you're just thinking about getting your keys. So we found that that has been something that our participants seem to need, and we were able to put bags together for them with the support of donor funding. So after move-in, the case was transferred to our rapid rehousing coach, who then carried the case for the duration of servicing. Initial assessments of the family, including our bridge to self-sufficiency and goal action plans, were completed. The coach met with Ms. B at least monthly in person. Right now it's virtually, and followed up on progress on goals and offered support, resources, and assisted in linking to servicing as needed. Some families only need monthly contact and others need more frequent check-ins and support. Ms. B's level of support varied. Every 3 months, Ms. B met with both the coach and the program manager for a recertification process. An assessment of her income was done to determine what portion of her total rent she was responsible for. Households are expected to contribute 30% of their income towards rent. A worksheet provided by HUD does the math for us, and it takes into account the amount of dependents. So there are a number of things as we continue to meet with Ms. B that we saw might be a challenge that might have been causing a barrier to success and stability. And one was her emotional well-being. While she was at St. Barnabas, she was connected to mental health support to allow her to address some trauma that was previous in her life. During the course of being at SBM at St. Barnabas, she was working so hard trying to keep up with the hours and making sure that she got money to help get out of shelter that she began to kind of slack off with relying on that support and leaning on them. So during the time that she was within our program, we began to see that, as she met with us, we began to see that this was a need that she really needed to reconnect, and it became relevant or evident to us that she had not been connecting with her supports. So we were able to work with her to get her reconnected and make sure that she got a schedule that worked best for her and her daughter. As we met with Ms. B, it also became apparent that she could take over the lease, but it would still be quite a strain. We also learned that there were some barriers to housing that would negatively affect her being able to get a lease on her own. She owed funds to a former landlord. With Ms. B's input, a goal was set, outlining steps on how to address the debt. Ms. B followed those steps, successfully set up a payment plan with the owner of the debt, and began paying it down. Another goal she had for herself related to increasing her income. She wanted to receive her CNA certification that would enable her to receive a higher hourly rate and also allow her to work at a nursing home, which she preferred. Ms. B also had already paid for and completed the training course for CNA certification. We found that the barrier was that now she did not have the funds to pay for the testing, and she was trying to make the choice of pay the utilities or pay to advance myself. So with funding made available from donors, we were able to pay the cost of the test once Ms. B registered. Completion of these goals ultimately removed barriers for both housing options and increasing income. Ms. B successfully exited the program, moving into permanent housing through local public housing. She's also working full-time with her certification and is continuing to make strides. It is hoped that she'll soon enroll in ECS Mindset program, my hope. So there are low lights in working in rapid rehousing. I think one of them is just wishing at times that families had more time with our support to work their goals and to make movement on the bridge. The other one I would say is the fact that it takes some time to make connections and build trust. In Ms. B's situation, it was a little bit easier to work with her. She was very motivated, and she did connect a little quicker with us. I think part being that she came from our own shelter and she was familiar with ECS work. One of the highlights, I would say, obviously, is success stories like Ms. B, knocking down barriers and achieving permanent housing. Absolutely a success and a highlight. I'd say also a participant's willingness to actively work the goals they outline for themselves. And again, it's really important that it's goals that they set for themselves that we don't put for them. Another highlight I would say is just seeing participants move on to wanting more in life and onto programs like our Mindset program. So I do see our program continuing to evolve and grow. We're constantly looking for ways to partner. We know that there are other organizations interested and committed in expanding on the work we do in supporting families and challenging poverty. As a matter of fact, we recently entered into a partnership with ARC, the Achieving Reunification Center, where we'll be accepting referrals for identified families whose only barrier to reunification of a child or children is housing. We're very excited about the partnership and looking forward to have an ally in challenging the impact of poverty. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nibert and Reina. I just wanted to bring up some of the questions that are in the chat. So Nibert, some of the things you talked about at the very end is partnering with other organizations and other individuals. And that's one of the things that some attendees on here are interested is how they can get involved, what they can do and how we can better care both for our houseless women and children, and also people who are in our other supportive housing programs.
So I would say the getting involved is connecting in with our external relations department, or reaching out to myself or Raina, letting us know what you have to offer. In terms of partnerships, again, it would be me. I'd love to hear from people in terms of what you can offer. In addition to just partnering with other programs who have the same, need to have their families that they're working with and servicing fight homelessness and get into housing. Certainly we can look at ways in which we can bridge that and where we can work together with that. But also we're looking at also for partners that maybe have buildings or housing and would like to perhaps, that they would be open to allowing for some of our families who need to get into a unit to be able to be housed there, whether we ran that program there. So there's lots of great things that I think we can do, and we're certainly open to looking at all the other options and how we can network with others.
A great example of a volunteer effort, Dave Anderson met an individual from St. Christopher's who happens to have a real estate background. And we're in the middle of talking about how she might get involved with helping us identify landlords as we grow our rapid rehousing programs, and also has some domain experience in just housing in general in the city and some ways that we might interact. But we also have a need in what I would call the advocacy bucket on the issues of housing. We have a dedicated inclusion and advocacy group, easy for me to say, advocacy group. And there are a number of issues in this space within the city that where homelessness and how the city is moving to a housing first model, and where services are needed, and all those that we need to, along with our peer agencies, influence. And your voice can be very, very important in that.
Thank you, Dave. Some other questions that were brought up were, and both Raina and Niebert, you touched on this, is how the pandemic is affecting how we're doing this work, as well as both the mental health of our participants. So if you could speak on that a little bit more, that would be great. Thank you.
Our shelter typically houses around 100 individuals, which is about 35 families. So what we did immediately was we tried to de-densify or spread the population out so people weren't in close proximity to each other. We moved to virtual programming, so we've been able to acquire tablets, a cell phone from Philadelphia Public Health, which allows our participants to have visits virtually instead of going into the office. We've identified health partners in our community to provide COVID testing. And one of the things that we worked heavily on was education for our participants, to just ensure that they were aware of how COVID is contracted, the impact that it can have, and ways to keep yourself safe. So those are some of the things that we've done. So right now we're only serving a portion or a fraction of what we would normally serve, and that really is to focus on the health and safety of both our staff and participants. And we've been very fortunate to not have been hit hard with any with COVID-19 during the pandemic.
And let me just emphasize, I mean, the team took very hard and decisive actions early on. We're one of the few shelters where we have a nurse on staff, and the team really came together to put some protocols in place that the city, in retrospect, agrees were the right actions. The other resource that some of you may be aware of, but we actually have embedded within the St. Barnabas community. We built a behavioral health clinic that is staffed by one of our partners. And that work has been incredibly valuable. That at this time it's virtual. Hopefully we'll get back to in person there, but that's also a unique feature of St. Barnabas. The ability to deal with a behavioral health specialist that's frankly not within our ranks has really made a significant difference. And we have seen over the last 2 to 3 years a fairly significant increase for a lot of reasons in behavioral health issues of individuals coming into shelter, which the team has really adapted well to. And it's a different way of working on occasion. And present some unique challenges, but that's a resource that we stepped up and put in place.
I would just share that with our rapid rehousing families. So just to be clear, our rapid rehousing families are in scattered units across the city, right? So it's tenant based. And as I shared, generally we meet with them at least once a month in person. And other times it might be, texting or phone communication or email or what have you. But what we have made certain to do is that our coach has worked with many of our participants who have the ability to, through Google numbers, and we FaceTime them with Google. And so trying to replicate that in person as much as possible. What we're finding is our families, they're feeling a little bit disconnected. So we wanted to make sure that we made them still feel engaged and connected with us and actually seeing someone. So it's not quite the same as being in the same room and, being able to see all the different mannerisms as they might answer some questions. But normally if you're in person, you can kind of see like, wait, your body didn't say the same thing as your mouth. But we're trying to replicate that to some extent with those FaceTime calls. So that was one way. And then also checking in with all of them who have other supports and making sure that they're still getting that. And many of them are doing that virtually as well through technology.
Abigail, are there any other questions that you think we should address at this time, or should we open it up if other people have questions that they want to ask in the session?
We did receive a question about the encampments on Ridge Ave and the Parkway and the potential effect of that on St. Barnabas and the houseless individuals who are residing there.
Let me come back to my opening remarks. Yeah, I read that the courts have decided that the city has the authority to move folks within the next 72 hours or so. And let me remind you that the way you find your way into St. Barnabas or into our rapid rehousing system is by referral through the city agency. So if an individual was experiencing homeless or on the street, they would come into the system through the office of OHS. And there's a very formal, there's a number of places and entry points where that would occur. We do not take, if you will, walk-in for some obvious reasons. But if you look at the total number of homeless that are in the city and the numbers, it's hard as a citizen of Philadelphia not to be concerned. And the growth of behavioral health and addiction issues in that population continues. One of our board members is a deacon, works in the St. Mark's in the Kensington neighborhood. And on a fairly regular basis, I mean, Phil is working with it directly and firsthand. What got my attention is he carries the Narcan pens, and he tells me that on a weekly basis he's using them. I mean, the level of of challenge and issues is just really, really huge. And so there's a number of agencies that are looking to deal with the homeless issue. We're doing it through this context. We introduced the coaching model into the shelter, which is way earlier than many other places that handle the empath model do. And we've seen a direct impact of the coaching. You heard the one story from Raina and Niebuhr on savings, and the everything's okay. Small steps, but that's how you come in. We would not be directly involved, but we would be through our advocacy group, I guess is the better way to characterize it. Niebuhr or Raina, anything you want to add there?
I would just share that OHS, so Raina and I are on a call every Friday with the Office of Homeless Services. And we are, we've been kept up to date with their efforts, and there are some key folks who are regularly in the encampments trying to reach out and to help folks who are there to help them come in off the street and to see how they can get them to come in and receive servicing in one way or another. And there's lots of other ways you can get servicing, so it doesn't necessarily mean come in and be in the shelter. And there are varying reasons and ways in why people, get to that position where they need to experience homelessness. So I would only say that, it is, just as Dave said, the referrals would come from the Office of Homeless Services. Our shelter is a family shelter. So it is a possibility that if someone, comes through the city's intake process, and they could be referred to us, and we could get if there's a family there, we could get a family that could be referred to us, and we have openings, and we will certainly accommodate, and we'll do what we can. We can also get something I didn't speak about. We can also get someone who perhaps may be in that encampment, but they've been down their luck and they're there, and they just need someone to help connect them to find a place that they can rent, and they would need that assistance for the first time. So perhaps it's called one-time assistance. So it might mean the security deposit and the first and last month's rent just to get in a unit, but that maybe they could get a job, or they will be working, or they have the potential to work, and they'd like to resume working. So in those cases, we could get that. And our contract, generally it's, you come through emergency housing. However, our contract is also, if you have what the HUD's definition of homelessness is, you can come right from the street. And if this is a service that best meets you, that you just need to get housed and you have a job and so on and forth, we can do that as well. So we do service participants who just need that one-time assist. So we don't continue on with them for 12 months, but they just need to get into something and then they were good to go. So sometimes that's the hardest, just getting a landlord to give somebody a chance, to rent to them.
Abigail, it's Cindy.
Hi.
Hi. I was the person who asked the question, Niebert, about the encampments, because I've been following this in the Inquirer, and the emphasis, understandably, is how to evacuate the residents of the encampment and the legal challenges, etc. But what I haven't been able to figure out is once they're evacuated, what happens to them. And so you're telling me there's a very organized program, triage, etc. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
But let me be clear that, Cindy, there needs to be space. And the challenge that we have within the city right now is there isn't always, in the case, Niebuhr, right now shelters are actually low because of COVID, so this may not be a good example, but in normal times, Niebuhr, what would you guess the wait list for shelter is on any given night, or Raina, on any given night when we're in more normal times?
So can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So on occasion, there is not enough space in shelter for individuals experiencing homelessness who need a place to stay. So they do have after hours or overflow spots where individuals who can't find a place to stay at night will stay in a large congregate area until shelter can find some place for them to stay. So I don't have an exact number, but I know that the Office of Homeless Services does have specific information about overflow on their website if you're interested in how many people they actually have to turn away, because some people are actually, prior to GoFid, people were turned away because there was no bed space for individuals. And it affects individuals more often than families who need a place to stay and shelter.
I mean, one thing that this group may be interested in is sort of the evolving policy towards solving the homelessness problem. And currently the city is following, and we're not the only city, Housing First is what it's called. And there've been studies that have shown that it's extremely difficult to get on a path of upward economic mobility or even to get a job if you don't have a place to live. So that's really the genesis of that policy. But the result of it is that there are fewer resources to support the kind of coaching that we've been talking about, the kind of coaching to help people meet their goals and have long-term success. And so that's kind of an unintended consequence, I believe, of this Housing First. And so those are really the resources that are in the shortest supply, from my understanding. Obviously, housing stock is an issue in the affordable realm, but actually Philadelphia has the lowest homeless, I mean, on the street numbers per capita than all the large cities. We are the #1 for poverty of all the large cities, the worst, but we're the best as far as people that have no place to stay and they're on the streets. So that's just
Right.
something I've learned over the years.
But it's
So it's
still,
really the counseling.
no, Shelley, you're absolutely right, but it's still almost 1,000 people on any
Right,
given night.
right. I'm not
No,
minimizing it. I'm just saying.
no,
per
I'm just,
capita.
I want to put it in context that, and again, the challenges that we face here, one of the things we're working with OHS right now is in our rapid rehousing program and with a couple of other partners to try and figure out how we deliver services in a more thoughtful and meaningful way that follow the coaching model. You know, that's not something that we are funded for by the city. And so we're working with them to provide those services and tap some of our other resources and see where we can go on a longer continuum and expand that program. My great fear with rapid rehousing is without services, you're going to see churn. People will be in a rapid rehousing stock, and unless there's a game plan put in place and some movement on the continuum, the odds of being back are higher than they ought to be. And so we really want to try and break that cycle. And we have, I am very encouraged by Liz Hirsch and Roberta Cancelleri, who are the two. Liz is the director there. We're having some very straightforward, very direct conversations, and we'll see where it takes us. And you know, Niebert and Raina and Arlie Steyer are who's our chief of programs. The three of them are right in the middle of that mix. And I give the department credit for listening and reacting. Now we got, again, in COVID, the challenge is going to be, guys, funding and tax revenues over the next 24 to 36 months is going to be brutal. And that's really what we as an agency are trying to get our arms around, is how do we react in that environment? You know, how do we deliver essential services? You know, of the three buckets of work, transformational, prevention, and stability, you know, where do we make investments? Where do we hold the continuity there? And again, what makes us unique is that coaching goes on in all three of those buckets, not just in mindset. And we believe that methodology has great value, but there's no lack of challenges, guys.
I think there's a question about that in the past, Section 8 housing has been in very short supply, and the question is, has that changed? I can't say overall if that has changed. What I will say is there are still waiting lists for new folks to be appointed Section 8. It's still a long list. Some of our families who have been in the pipeline for a long time, or many families who've been in the pipeline for a while, are slowly getting called. I think what's happening now is there's a bit of competitiveness with like rapid rehousing programs for landlords who are willing to rent to our families who, you know, may have had some challenges in the past, may have had landlord evictions in their history and so forth. But those same landlords that are willing to take Section 8 because it's government funding that helps to cover part of that rent are the same landlords we're trying to tap as well for rapid rehousing and to say, give our families a chance. So I think there's a little bit of competitiveness happening there. To my knowledge, I don't believe the list has opened up again, but I do know that families, we've had some people who were in rapid rehousing that when their Section 8 finally came up, they were able to get to that. And also in our former supported housing program, they came up on the list finally and they were able to go into a Section 8.
But Neighbor, I think it's important that you indicate that waiting list is not months, it's years.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah, just
It is very long.
I mean, 5 years is not unusual.
Right. Okay, with that, it's probably time to wrap up, and I'm going to follow up on the topic of if you want to get more involved, what are some of the opportunities that there are, so that you'll have that in writing rather than show a slide that you have to write something down or whatever. But I do want to bring to your attention the Forum on Justice and Opportunity, which is our annual thought leadership conference. This will be the 7th year of that conference, and it's going to be 100% virtual this year. And it's usually a full day, 5 to 6 hours in person. We knew that we weren't going to have a program that was that exciting to keep somebody sitting at their computer for 5 to 6 hours. So what we did was create a week-long conference where it's 1 hour a day around lunchtime at noon, except for the last day, there are 2 sessions, noon and 1 o'clock. And it is focused on how do we provide opportunities and racial justice during this time of recovery, economic recovery. And I don't, Abigail, you want to show the website that you can go to? Hopefully most of you are familiar with our website, but if you're not, here is the page on Forum on Justice and Opportunity. As you notice, you can donate to ECS up in the right-hand corner, and there's also an opportunity for you to contact our manager, volunteer services, to contact us there. And scroll down and you can see that Vi Sikahema is our featured moderator this year. He has just been a joy to work with. He has an amazing personal story of his own. He's very dedicated to helping Philadelphia become a better place for all to live. And what else should I be saying about the forum, you guys? We hope that you register and you participate. There's going to be, we have 16 speakers, and we have some really national and local thought leaders. And I guess the next thing I should mention is that the last behind the scenes we've scheduled is on September 24th, a Thursday at 10:30. And we're going to be focused on Seeing Youth Succeed, which is our program for teens that enables them to build confidence in their futures and set goals to help them stay in school and meet their own personal goals. And actually, Victoria 6 will be your host for that event, and hopefully you'll sign up for that also.
So with that, guys, again, the website has a lot of information. Let me thank both Raina and Niebert, not only for today, but also for your leadership in general. We are blessed with very, very talented people at ECS, and they represent just the best of the best. And we are fortunate to be able to work with such colleagues. And you can imagine, you know, they have families, and in the middle of COVID, they are balancing a lot of things. And I am just grateful for their humanity and their compassion. So thank you. I owe that to you publicly, and will continue to say that. But that's true throughout the organization. And again, for those of you who are on the call, some of you are board members, some of you are new to us. We are just grateful for your interest. And again, anything that we can do to follow up, to continue to give you insight into the work, whether it be advocacy, whether it be direct volunteering, whether it be other information that's useful to you, please feel free to reach out up to and including me. Again, you can get to me through the website. But again, we are grateful for your interest. And as I say at the end of all of these, welcome to the movement. Poverty can be beat, but it's going to require all of us. And given events of the last, well, actually over the many years, but really this summer seems to be the time when this issue of racial inequity is front and center. Our work goes at the root cause, and and there are many good agencies in the city whose work goes at the good cause, and it requires all of us to focus on making the change. And I have to think that in these times and at this moment, we have a unique opportunity to step up. And it's time that we all do so. And that is my call to everybody that I see and speak to. And again, it's time we step up. So with that, if there are no more questions, please feel free to reach out. Shelley and Abigail, thank you for pulling this off. It's the over/under was $5 on whether my video would die. So I'm not quite sure if you paid my Comcast bill or not, but thank you for the support, and everybody have a good day. Stay safe, be well, and